Hello, and welcome to the introductory video on the Coolant Decontamination Unit, also known as the CDU. The CDU system is wheeled over to the coolant reservoir, where the return line is placed into the coolant reservoir, and the system is plugged in. Once plugged in, the pump is placed into the coolant reservoir. Note, both the pump and the pump float are both placed into the coolant reservoir. The pump float is then positioned to ensure the top layer of oil flows uniformly into the openings. Once positioned, the pump is plugged into the outlet on the top of the CDU. Once plugged in, the CDU lid is raised and the valve is opened to allow the coolant to start flowing into the CDU. The coolant enters the CDU and starts to fill the deeper or skimmer side of the CDU tank. Once the coolant reaches an appropriate height, it goes over to the shallower or light side of the CDU tank and then exits out the return line. Ensure the return line is placed into the coolant reservoir prior to turning on the pump. Note, the valve is opened up all the way initially to get the CDU tank full. Once it is filled up and coolant is exiting, the flow is decreased to allow for a thin skim layer on the light side of the CDU. The triangle with the indication lines can help show the depth of the coolant as it exits the unit. Once the proper flow is set, the CDU lid is lowered. Once the CDU lid is lowered, the lights can be switched on. The CDU is now operating normally. After a short period of time, the CDU now has a buildup of oil in the skimmer side of the tank, and the thin layer of coolant is continually exiting on the light side of the tank. Note, the lid should never be opened while the lights are on. Since there is oil built up, the skimmer timer is turned on. This engages the skimmer wheel inside the CDU tank and starts collecting the oil layer and depositing it into the external container. This skimmer is on a timer to ensure that it does not continually run if it is forgotten. As the external container fills up, the oil layer remains on the top, and the usable coolant is on the bottom. In order to keep that usable coolant, the drain line is used to return it back into the coolant reservoir. The drain line is primed by filling a portion of it and then closing the valve. Once the line is approximately 3/4 full, the valve is closed and the line is lowered to just above the coolant reservoir. Once the valve is opened, it creates enough suction to start pulling the coolant from the bottom of the external container. The valve is closed before the oil layer has a chance to enter the drain line. If this drain line is kept full, there will be no need to reprime it. The oil that is left over in the external container can be discarded. The skimmer wheel can be ran as needed depending on how oily the coolant is. Once all the oil is removed from the coolant reservoir, it is a good idea to slow the flow of the CDU down even more to allow the UVC lights to have more of an effect on slower/shallower moving coolant through the CDU.